is the least bad in the world right now economically. On any metric, like I said, every nation would kill to have our problems.
I was just thinking as you were speaking about this idea of perception versus reality, and then you mentioned algorithms and social media. And as you said that, I thought to myself, do you know what's interesting? Now that algorithms and social media have made our politicians more visible than ever, if you go back 50 years, you only saw them stood at the podium, right, making the speech. Now you see them multiple times a day. If I scroll on Twitter, X, whatever, YouTube, I see Trump doing 10 speeches a day. I get to know him more. And I was wondering, in this digital age, is personality now more important than ever? When I'm not just seeing you at the podium, I'm seeing you for 3 hours on Rogan, then 2 hours later, I'm seeing you in another state, then I'm seeing you on a clip, I'm seeing you at McDonald's. And so the old politicians of the past were very like straight, and you'd see them on the podium. How polished was that speech? Now it's actually, it seems the algorithms are going for lo-fi politicians, and personality seems to be more important than principle.
Yeah, we've definitely replaced politicians who were sort of pragmatists and practitioners who used to go to Congress and legislate and pass laws. We've replaced a lot of them with performers.
Yeah, in the UK as well. We've just had a series of them.
You always got to look at incentives. And the person who raises the most money is almost always reelected. And the incumbent, 92% reelection rate, despite the fact that Congress has an 8% approval. So the incentives are to raise a lot of money. And the easiest way to raise kind of a lot of money is small dollar donations. It's actually easier than trying to get money from a PAC or big money. And the way you do that is you say something fairly incendiary that tickles the censors of your tribe by making the other side look stupid. You say something, Jewish space lasers, or Biden is a war criminal. That ends up on TikTok, and the hard left or the hard right see that and start sending in money. And so you have some of the most famous legislators in U.S. Congress have never passed a bill, but are outstanding at getting on TikTok and raising a lot of money. So it's gone from politicians to performers.
I was just thinking about, have I ever seen a boring politician go viral on TikTok? And I've just never seen it. I've never seen it boring. But even in the case you said, where if you say something incendiary, it's both sides send you viral,
Yeah.
which is interesting.
Well, look at Trump. If he says, something crazy that I'm going to protect women whether they want it or not, that goes viral. And then everyone, including on my podcast, we're talking about it instead of having a discussion about inflation. Or if Trump gets into office, his current economic plan shows triple the deficits of the Harris economic plan. That is essentially what we've been unable to do, or the left's been unable to do, is help young people connect the dots. That the deficit under Trump will probably be ultimately the largest tax increase in history on young people.
First of all, there's a lot being said there. On one aspect, what's being said, I'm going to protect women whether they like it or not. The fact that you think that that is a controversial thing that is said, you have a financial podcast, and instead of talking about financial things, you take a moment to talk about that has more to do about you than it does the comment at hand, because the full context of that particular comment, and I might just slip that in there and edit it in here so you can hear it. It was Trump talking about he's going to protect women whether they like it or not. He's not going to let criminals and different people who shouldn't be here or who are criminals who are out in the street to go around and harm women. I'm not going to allow it. And if you think that's a crazy statement, that says a lot about you as an individual.
No, I want to protect the people. I want to protect the women of our country. I want to protect the women. Sir, please don't say that. Why? They said we think it's very inappropriate for you to say. So why? I'm president. I want to protect the women of our country. They said, sir, I just think it's inappropriate for you to say. Pay these guys a lot of money. Can you believe it? I said, well, I'm going to do it whether the women like it or not. I'm going to protect them. I'm going to protect them from migrants coming in. I'm going to protect them from foreign countries that want to hit us with missiles and lots of other things.
Secondly, this notion that President Trump is going to increase the deficit with his tax plan, it's all been talked about. It's all been debunked. It's not going to happen. You're obviously left-leaning, and that's your perspective, and that's what you think. Fine, this, that, and the third, but you're just showing where your politics is, where your perspective is on all of this. Okay, let's continue with this. I'll break down some more right after.
We're fine for the next 20 or 30 years probably because of our creditworthiness and our ability to borrow money. But at some point, shit's going to get real, and the Chinese or foreigners are going to stop showing up to buy our treasuries. Interest rates are going to skyrocket, and you'd have massive inflation. And at some point, that debt is going to come due, right? So I love that every lie is a debt, and at some point it comes due. But we haven't been able to connect the dots for young people that these deficits will in fact be a tax on young people because it's a wonky, boring conversation, and we'd rather talk about this outrageous thing you said. So these outrageous things people say take oxygen out of the room around any real discussion around policy. And in the US, I don't know if it's the same way in the UK, but politicians love their jobs, so they gerrymander every district. Every congressional district is very hard red or hard blue. So we send kind of the crazies from the far left and the far right. It's no longer the general election, it's the primary. So it's a war, it's an election between Republicans or an election between Democrats. So they all try to out conservative or out progressive each other. And we've sent a group of people to Congress who fundamentally have a entirely different worldview than one another. And also it's minority rule. In the US, 20% of our population is 80% of the senators. And the majority of Americans are somewhere in the middle. And that does not describe the representation. So we have sort of minority rule now.
One thing that's incredibly unique is there's some paradoxical things being said here, especially by Scott Galloway. While Steve, the host of the Diary of a CEO podcast, he really tries to hone in on some important aspects here. And one thing that was specifically said, the good thing is nowadays you can actually get to know these politicians. You can see them on a 3-hour podcast with Rogan. You can see them on a 2-hour podcast. You can see them out in the public doing things with McDonald's. You can actually get to know them. But then on the latter end, it's saying that, well, it's all about personality and it's not really about getting to know the person, which is paradoxical. You're going to know way more about a person from a podcast, like you said, but that doesn't mean that it's all about just superficial personality things in which you actually don't know the person. That's a disparate of a statement. Nevertheless, Scott Galloway tries to explain and continue on by saying, well, yeah, you're right, because politicians actually used to be incredibly pragmatic and pass tons of laws, and now it's just about personality in which they say crazy things like protect women. Well, again, I don't think saying things like protect women are crazy, but here's what's actually happening. Nowadays, a politician can't just speak on a soundbite and go to the podium and talk for 2 minutes, 4 or 5 minutes. Like Barrett said, they actually have to be able to explain what they're going to do, what they're talking about in long form talk, like the podcast is about. It's about long form. So if they're not able to do that, then they are not going to succeed as a politician. The sound bites, the clips, that's just a way, another medium and another form for you as an individual to be able to expand your horizon and your reach. At the end of the day, they're not becoming president off a soundbite. They're becoming a president off of the fact that they can speak and explain themselves in long form. Okay. And it's what was being alluded to in this conversation, but also at the same time, that part of the conversation was ignored. And what was talked about was, well, it's just all a personality popularity contest. So which is it? But nevertheless, Scott Galloway also talked about how the Democrats were not able to resonate with young people because they don't have this personality thing going on. Well, at the end of the day, people on the left never needed personalities to get young people, because young people are typically more left leaning than older people. So it was never about that. So I'm confused at what's being said. There's some incorrect things that are being said as far as I'm concerned with Scott Galloway. Smart guy, but Here he's, as far as I'm concerned, just not teeing off the golf ball towards this direction of the hole in order to get an eagle, a birdie, or a sinkable putt. He's out way in the weeds somewhere. Nevertheless, hope you enjoyed this video. Stick around for more videos and make sure you subscribe to this channel. Thanks for checking this video. I'm Mr. Rembrandt. This is Mr. Rembrandt. See you later.